Let's take this conversation forward with Siraj Hussain, former Union Agriculture Secretary, visiting Senior Fellow at ICRIER, as well as Akshay D'Souza from Bizom. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in with us this morning. Mr. Hussain, I want to start with you. What we saw yesterday also in terms of MSPs, the increase that has come in there, the outlay has been increased over there. So what is the word? Do you think that now finally we will see that big moves coming in for the agri sector and a turnaround here in the sector?
Actually, the increase in MSP which was approved by the government is less than my expectation. In fact, in case of paddy, the increase in MSP is only 5.4%. And the MSP which will be received by major rice producing states like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, etc., will be much lower than the MSP which will be received by Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, where the farmers will get rupees 3,100 per quintal. Similarly, for other crops, I was thinking that there will be more increase in the MSP so that the farm sector distress could be addressed to some extent.
Right. For your expectation, it is below that. Akshay, let me bring this conversation to you as well. We have seen the rural stress for the consumption side for a while now. What is your view on this, and where do you see the rural shaping up now?
So I think a couple of things that I think will play out now. I think you've already seen the first piece on the MSP. Now, if you remember, one of the major changes India had done in especially the essential commodities is we had export curbs for the last couple of years on a variety of stuff like rice, you had wheat, you had sugar. So I think some of that will probably ease off now that elections are over, which also automatically kind of gives you an opportunity to kind of make higher incomes, and I think that is something that I think will play out. I think that what we've seen, with Dabur and Nestle and some of the other FMCG is that rural distribution, aggressive rural distribution is winning. So I think that is something that is playing out in parallel. We had seen a quarter last year, the previous quarter, the Q4 of last FY, the JFM, where we've seen a lot of price cuts being done to fuel consumption. Now, the big shift that I am seeing now is that some of these companies are getting conscious on margins, and I think that price cuts are now leading to slight price rises also. So I think this variety of play, this multi-factor play is coming into effect. And I think if we kind of sustain a normal monsoon, and when I say normal, not just statistically, but I'm saying consistently through the season, because we've had a few years where the monsoon has been erratic, right? I think it's been shortfall for the large majority and excessive at the end. But I'm saying if we have a stable monsoon, I think agri income, coupled by the exports and the MSP and all, should kind of go up, and I think that should be a big fuel along with as we enter the festival season.
All right. Wanted to get in a perspective from you then, Siraj, as to what the impact or the expectation rather is when it comes to the 100-day action plan, the agri-infra push, a lot of spotlight on that. What is it that you're anticipating?
Are you asking me?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. You see, 100 days is too small a period to expect any significant policy initiative in the agriculture sector. And the reason is that agriculture at its core is a state subject. So the new agriculture minister would have to speak to the chief ministers of the states, and he can do it because he has a long experience of running the agriculture sector very well in Madhya Pradesh. So he has to build consensus on some of the major things. But even then, I would expect that the first thing on his priority list would be completion of the 99 projects which were taken up when NDA 1 was formed in 2014. Out of those 99 projects, I think only some 55 or 56 projects have been completed. So that should be on top of his agenda. I'm not talking of 100 days, but as such, it should receive a very high priority.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to toss that question to you as well, Akshay, in terms of what you think is going to be on top of mind, or what really the wish list is when it comes to the 100-day action plan and even beyond that as a longer time frame.
I'd really begin with the export curves. I think we've already seen spices recording their highest volumes of exports right now. And despite the crisis, I think we've seen that happening. I would expect that all the other essential commodities where India is a popular export hub should kind of get back in full flow. I think that is something that I will see coming up straight away. And I think obviously see greater reforms, farm reforms that I think will kind of be pushed through, not just 100 days, but even going forward. I think some of that, I think we've seen political challenges coming in the way pre-election. I think there will be a definite push to kind of make sure that those get out and get also implemented at a faster pace now that the elections are behind us.
Right. Mr. Hussain, you were making the point how the MSP right now, what numbers came in yesterday was below your expectation. Are there any more concerns that one needs to be aware of, or do you think the food inflation side, that would be a concern that would come in for the government front to take more steps?
No, that is correct. The government has to balance the interest of the producers and the interest of the consumers all the time. And that is why we have seen all these bans in the last 2 years. Now, the thing is that unless the farmers are incentivized to produce more, the inflation will be even more. If the production is less, then there will be even more food inflation. And we have seen the limits of RBI's monetary policy actions as far as food is concerned. So food production has to be incentivized. And for that, the policy tool to keep the MSP or the support price very low, I would say, is not a very ideal policy. In fact, MSPs do not really benefit a large number of farmers because procurement does not take place. In fact, if you take the data of last 5 years, you would see that the chana prices remained below MSP for most of the time. And the result of that, the area under chana and other pulses and even coarse cereals has gone down. And due to that, we are now importing pulses, including yellow pea at zero duty. Similarly, the MSP of mustard was not protected and cheap imported oil has come. So the point is that the interest of consumers and the producers has to be balanced. But in any case, I am not very sure whether the government will lift the ban on export of wheat or export of non-basmati rice. But I do see some relaxation in export of sugar.
Akshay, what are your thoughts in terms of overall how we are seeing the agri front move for consumption companies, and in terms of what more stimulus do you think on ground when you talk to everyone that is required right now for the rural side to come up more, the farmers' support coming up more? What is it that you're hearing on ground?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of things, right? I think if you look at this, go slightly back, and I think we go back to COVID, and I think COVID gave a big spike in prices overall. And I think that is also led by a large rise in input costs, which I think some of these FMCG companies over the previous 2 quarters, they have tried to normalize and try to spur consumption by dropping prices. And we saw that play out for a large number of players, especially in the last quarter. However, that being said, consumption did not spike. So I think the big shift that needs to be probably happening is how can we kind of also raise incomes in rural. And I think you have select opportunities with respect to, say, organic farming or incentives for millet farming, so on and so forth. Some of them in organic dairy farming, for that matter. I think we are seeing a shift happening. And I think while that shift happens, it doesn't really touch a large volume of people. I think the big shift has to happen based on what incentivization you do to kind of get these farmers, rural consumers, to essentially earn more income, and at the same time ensure that consumption is spurred by macro and even micro factors. Because I think macro factors, definitely summer has been one key factor. A normal monsoon will go a long way, I think, to ensure that kind of plays out. And I think we'll have to look at and wait and look for, I think, about a month and a half from now, when festive season starts. I think that's going to be another big trigger to kind of make sure that consumption in rural also picks up, in line with expectations, or at least, high single digits thereabouts, at least. So I think that's really where the hope is now, along with kind of, leveraging the small pockets of opportunity that I see.
Right, and there is also a high expectation, Siraj, from the industry with respect to the land labor reforms, a lot more being done on that front to make it more seamless. Is that going to be the expectation as well?
You see, the Niti Aayog has set up a committee under Dr. Haq for preparing a model law for leasing of land. But unfortunately, the states are not on board. In fact, what has been happening is that there is a lot of informal leasing going on. Only Andhra Pradesh shows 30% leasing of land. Punjab shows very little, about 9%. But we know from our travels and our interaction with the farmers that there is a lot of leasing which takes place without documentation. You see, the problem is that people are very reluctant to lease out their land for fear of losing the possession of the land. And it is not only the farmers. You see, even in urban areas, people who own flats and houses are reluctant to lease out those houses, and therefore you see a large number of houses in cities which are vacant because people are not confident that the tenant will vacate the land. So I am not very sure whether leasing laws will go forward, but we have an agriculture minister who has a good hand on this and a lot of experience. So I think he will have to speak to state governments, and maybe he can persuade some BJP-run governments to make it easier. So that is a very good area. In any case, we have seen successful models of contract farming in poultry. So contract farming can come without leasing of land.
Mr. Hussain as well as Akshay, thank you so much for joining in with us this morning for a discussion in terms of where the agri sector is headed and what one should be expecting from the government going forward. But
if you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.